So Pastor Satise, thank you so much for being with us today and for sharing with West Point. I just want to give you a little bit of background as to why we're doing this particular message and kind of why it's part of this series. You know, I grew up in an all-white community, and growing up in that neighborhood, I moved to Minneapolis when I went to college and was part of a very diverse church, Bethel's Rock Church in at the time Minneapolis, and then moving to Richfield, and made a lot of friends that in that community. And God called us to Delano, and so as we were planning to go out there, I did some research on the community and found out at the time that Delano was 97% Caucasian. And I just checked this morning, actually, just to see it. Now it's 95% now, so we're making progress. But at the time we moved out here, and I started praying, God, give me that 3%.
Praise the Lord.
I want to be the most diverse church in this city, and we had already had several families that had adopted from all over the world, from China and from Africa, and so we certainly had that in our DNA and in our heart for sure. But I remember praying, like, God, just bring in families that would reflect kind of the world that we live in now. And that first summer, there were 4 families that started coming, and 3 out of the 4 families were either non-white families or mixed families, and the 4th couple of that family just this year are in the process of adopting 2 amazing African American girls. So all 4 of those families brought some diversity in our church, and I just remember, even just thinking about it this morning, it just caused me to tear up a little bit, just thinking of it was just a sign to me of God's love. It made me feel like I was at home, as we moved out here. And so this idea of being a diverse church is something that's really important to me. And I think it's my hope that our church would be a model to our community.
Yes.
A couple of years ago, there was actually an incident in our city. A black family had moved to town here. They built a house. They were planning to retire in Delano, and someone broke into their home and spray painted racist graffiti all over their walls and over their stuff. And it was just a really terrible time for our community. We were on the cover of the Star Tribune for all the wrong reasons. And I know that doesn't reflect the heart of our city. It was very upsetting to most of the people that live here, but it did kind of highlight that we still have some work to do. And there is some racial prejudice and some outright racism in our community and certainly in our world. And I want to be a church that's on the front lines of that battle. And so we were talking about this series with our staff. I suggested that maybe we should bring in someone to help me preach this message rather than just listening to the white guy talk about racism. So that's why I gave you I sent you a text message, and church, this is my friend, Pastor Satise. I actually heard your interview on Susie Larson on her podcast shortly after the death of George Floyd, and you just did such an incredible job of kind of sharing that perspective. And so I thought you would be the perfect person to share a little bit with us. And so I'll just give a little bit of your background, and you can kind of fill in some of the details. But Satise Roddy is an African American woman pastor who's leading a church in an affluent and predominantly white suburb. She's also a police chaplain, and just a great preacher and a woman of God. And I gotta just ask you, did you wake up one day and say, God, I want the toughest assignment that you could possibly give me? So would you just share a little bit kind of about your history and your family, your husband, and Tim, and maybe a little bit of your testimony too, and how you ended up in Minnetonka as a pastor.
Absolutely. It's funny that you would say that, because I just told some of the congregation this past Sunday that I didn't just wake up and say I wanted to be a pastor in Minnetonka, but it's a blessing. And someone asked me not too long ago, actually sat down across from me and asked me a question, and the question was, how do you feel having a double oppression? And I'm thinking, well, what do you mean a double oppression? Being Black, female in the city of Minnetonka. And I had to think about it for a second, and after thinking about it, I said, I wear it like a badge of honor because God placed me there.
Yeah.
So Tim and I live in Edina, so predominantly white, and I never really thought about being there and being one of very few Black people, but it's been pointed out to me, and people have pointed it out and kind of mentioned it to me, and so until they started to point it out to me, it just, again, it didn't really bother me. But you want to know how I got to Minnetonka, or you want to know more about my family?
Yeah, I'd love to hear a little bit about your story.
I'm originally from California. I moved here in 2007 to get married to my husband, Tim. We met on eHarmony, and first let me say, when I tell people that we met on eHarmony, I want to let them know that eHarmony is the tool, but God is the source.
Yeah.
So we did a lot of praying about that, and when I met him in 2005, 2 months later, I was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of breast cancer, and the doctors didn't expect me to make it. And so before we went on eHarmony, it was my girlfriend and I, real close girlfriend, we sat down and we wrote a list of everything we wanted in a husband, and we said we were not going to deter from that. And so when we wrote the list, I said I wanted someone that had a heart for God, someone that would pray over me, and that someone that would not run when the going got tough. And so well, I got to find that out and to experience that, because when I was diagnosed with breast cancer and finally told Tim that I was diagnosed, his words to me were, "We will get through this." So I knew right away he was supposed to be in my life. I didn't know to what degree, but obviously God had plans. And so we dated for a couple of years, because I went through chemotherapy for 8 months and radiation for 2 months, so I couldn't travel. He would come visit me every 21 days after a treatment, and I was basically bedridden. So I got to see his heart, I got to know his heart, I got to see that he would pray, that he wasn't afraid when things got tough. So that began our courting, and we did it, as I said, for almost 2 years. And then in 2007, he had asked me to marry him, so I moved to Minnesota. Minnesota was not in my vocabulary. I had no idea about Minnesota. I really didn't. And as a matter of fact, one of the questions that one of my friends asked in California is, "Satise, are there any Black people in Minnesota?" So I had no idea, but once I came to visit after I had the treatment, I came to visit that one time. As soon as I stepped off the plane, I realized that this was home. That there was no turning back, that God allowed me to get to know Tim's heart, because he was my husband. So I moved here in 2007, we got married. And back in California, I was in ministry. I was not on staff, but I did ministry for quite a while, and served as a pastor, and just loved doing ministry. But again, it was California. It was like a melting pot. I mean, color and race, none of that was an issue. And so I didn't experience that really until I got to Minnesota. And so now I know why the person asked if there were any Black people in Minnesota. And honestly, I never felt the impact of being discriminated against until I became a pastor, honestly. And so, and how that happened is we were going to a church when we first got here, and it was about 5,000 people, and I probably was only 1 or 3 Blacks that was going there. And again, it didn't bother me, but I remember feeling some kind of anxiety when I would go to church. And I remember asking one of my pastor friends, have you ever been in a place where you just felt felt alone. And I honestly thought it was because I was no longer in California. I was here in Minnesota. And I asked her, I said, have you ever felt that way? And she said, you know what? I can't say that I have. And I said, you know, I really feel that when I go to the church, when I go to my job, which I was working at the time, I feel that I'm just alone. And she told me, she said, Satise, look around you. And I said, okay, what do you mean? She said, just look around you. You're one of only one black person in this area. And I'm thinking, okay, and I never thought about it. It never, I knew there was something, but I never put it together that it was because of my being black, because again, I never had an issue with that. So afterwards, again, I did not allow that to bother me. I mean, there's many times when I've been the only black. I mean, I'm married to a white man, and going to family events, I'm the only black. So what we began to do is we just began to just love each other, love the people in our area, and I wanted to do that. And the church I was attending at that time with 5,000 people, I started a women's ministry there, and it was over about 50 women in the ministry. And what we realized, though, is that none of those women were from Minnesota. None of them. And it was a thing where they felt alone as well. So again, I didn't equate color because we were of all different nationalities. But after a while of going there, 3.5 years, we moved to another church, which was a little bit more diverse, but the pastors were not diverse. And I felt discrimination from them. I was not on staff, but I served as a pastor, a volunteer pastor there, and I was treated terribly. Very terribly, but again, I did not equate it to being black. But I'm learning this, and again, being in a position like this and not knowing, it was a suppression. I was suppressing everything, and it was almost like an oppression. And so after about 3.5 years of being there, I wanted to leave. God released me. We went to EPAG, Eden Prairie Assemblies of God. And when I went there, I told Tim, we're not going to say anything about ministry. We're just going to go there and we're just going to heal. But I went to lunch, I think, with Pastor Jack Perrin and his wife, and they realized the call on my life. So what he did is he took me under his wing. He just prayed for me. They mentored me, and it became something that, a relationship that I just felt safe there. And so when we were doing that, I felt no discrimination from Pastor Jack. I only felt love, and that's a place I wanted to be. But after being there about 2 years, almost 2 years, he said that the Holy Spirit told him that I was going to be the next pastor at a church in Minnetonka. And I said, oh no, that's not going to happen. And he said just to pray about it. And I prayed about it for probably 6 months, and God said yes. He started opening up the doors. And so I ended up as lead pastor at Oasis Church in Minnetonka. It was, again, I had no idea of my surroundings, and when I say that I was the only black person at the church, all white congregation, and somebody pointed that out to me. Over the course of about 4 years, I had at least 4 to 5 pastors tell me that it's never going to work because you're a black female pastor in the suburbs, and normally black pastors are in the inner city. And that broke my heart because, one, I've never, unless God said so, never seen myself pastoring a church in the inner city. I'm in the suburbs. Yeah. And so I thought, we're walking this journey together. And, you know, we have a call in our lives. I'm ordained just like you are. And how dare you tell me that it's not going to work? You're obviously looking at man and not looking to God. Yeah. Again, God knew, I'm sure, knew that I was black and female when he placed me at Oasis Church. Yeah. So again, none of that really bothered me, but I don't know if you can relate to this, but when you are in a place and you're not really aware of your surroundings, and then someone points it out, I found myself going in a room and saying, I'm the only black in here, you know, things like that. But I had to pray about that and release that because I know that I think about the scripture in Genesis 1:27 when it talks about being made in the image of God. So I look at myself and I see myself and others in the Imago Dei, made in the image of God, and I'm exactly who God called me to be and who he wants me to be. So it is a place where I'm learning and my eyes are being opened, and I love what I do, and I love that God has called me. to this.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. My first kind of experience, I guess, in kind of witnessing prejudice firsthand and really being observant of it. My brother, who he was on your board for a little while, he was coming to North Central, and his best friend from the Chicago area came and visited and spent the weekend with him. And so we were hanging out, and he happens to be black. And so we went out to eat, and we got in the restaurant, and they took us, and it was a slow time. There were hardly any people there, and everybody was kind of seated in the front area, and they brought us all the way around the back and in the corner. We sat down, and I was looking around. I'm like, what in the world is going on here? Like, why did they seat us back here? And Irvin looks at me, and he's like, Paul, are you serious right now?
Wow.
And it's just, I think that's kind of just the reality of things. People are just unaware sometimes that this discrimination or this prejudice exists. So maybe what are some of the ways where you maybe personally experienced that more subtly, or maybe not so subtly, like you shared with some of these other pastors?
Yeah, too, when you said that, some people are just unaware of it, because I remember a pastor telling me that, you're here and you're in Minnetonka, you're in Minnesota, and it's just not a comfortable setting, a comfortable situation. And my answer to him was, I'm very comfortable. This is nothing new to me. And he said, no, I'm not talking about you being uncomfortable. I'm talking about everyone else being uncomfortable. People are just not ready for it. And so I began to see that people were uncomfortable. But again, I had no idea that it was because of the color of my skin. They didn't know how to interact with me. They didn't know how to communicate with me, if you would. And again, I've never experienced that, or don't remember experiencing it until I came to Minnesota. So it's difficult. It's difficult knowing that, because I see people for who they are, not what color they are.
Right.
And so that's something that I had to learn. And I really don't want that to be on my mind or in my heart, because it is a heart issue. And if I'm busy trying to figure out why people are not communicating with me, then that is going to, it's going to distract me from getting to know the person for who they are and them getting to know me.
Right.
So
I guess that kind of leads us to the next question. Like, what do you think is at the heart of racism in our country?
I think it's just being uneducated, misinformed. I have something that I read, Nelson Mandela, and he said, no one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. Mm-hmm. And I think that it's a learned behavior, because no one is born, racist. They just aren't. It's just, I think it's superiority, people looking down upon other people, but it's what they learn. And so it's a heart issue. It really is a heart issue. So what's at the heart of it is misinformation, hate, but not all racism is caused by hate.
Yeah.
Again, it's just being uneducated and not knowing and seeing what other people are doing and just going with the status quo.
Yeah.
So.
That's so true. So how do we make progress?
Well, I think some progress is being made. I have to say, I see that non-Black or whites are coming to the table. They're getting a seat at the table. They're listening. They're wanting to hear, because again, a lot of them don't know. They don't know, and they don't know what they don't know. So I believe that they're starting to open their ears to hear, their eyes to see, and their hearts to receive what's really going on. I believe that those that were in denial are no longer denying that it exists, and they really want to know what's happening so that they can be a part of the solution as opposed to being part of the problem. Because again, a lot of people don't know. And I want to say too that when I was discriminated against, and I felt that I was, and I don't want to say victim because I never see myself as a victim. As long as there's Jesus Christ, I see myself as a victor. But when people are saying things that are racist remarks towards me, I don't think that a lot of them are hateful. I don't think that a lot of them know. I think a lot of it is unconscious bias. Yeah. And they just really don't know. And so, but we as a people, a Black people, I can educate you, and let you know what you just said is a racist remark. It made me feel very uncomfortable. And I don't have a problem with saying that because I am secure in who I am in Christ. And so I just want to share that because, again, if you don't know, I want to help you with that because I don't want you to come off as a racist if you're really not a racist. You're just misinformed. So.
Yeah. So as just a follow-up question to that, as a white person, like how do we, in a healthy way, ask those questions and say, hey, help me understand better. Is there a way to approach that will help us kind of be more aware of that?
Yeah, I think coming to the table and asking the questions and be ready to be uncomfortable, because if you don't know, you are going to be uncomfortable, but don't be afraid. Don't be fearful to ask those questions and really listen to the person's heart. Because I'm a believer, we're believers, I believe prayer first, and ask God to help you and to be ready and okay with the things that you hear. Because some things you may hear, because you've never experienced it, you would never believe that it would have happened. I mean, that even happens with me. I mean, I don't have it as bad, I don't think, as a Black male. Because some of the things that I hear now, I just, until this happened to me a couple of months ago, I don't know if it would have resonated with me the way it does now. Because again, if I experienced that from pastors over the course of 4 to 5 years, and then that incident that happened, I guess about a week, maybe 2 weeks before the George Floyd thing happened, I think that, that broke me. It hurt me. I cried. I think I'm still healing from that. Praise God that I am healing. But can you imagine the person that's experienced it all their lives? This only happened to me, and this was just a small part of it, and I know how it broke me. So I have a different perspective when I talk to people now when they say they've been victims of racism.
That's good. Talk to us a little bit about your experience as a police chaplain and what that's been like and how you got involved in that.
Okay. Well, what we have is a group in the city of Minnetonka, and it also we're in the middle of Minnetonka Hopkins, and so we have a group called the Faith Leaders of Minnetonka, and what that is a group of pastors, clergy from all denominations where we come together to network and build community and get to know the community and see how we can be of help in the community. When we are doing that, there's issues that come up, things that are needed in the city, and one was chaplaincy. And so I believe there's 4 of us. It used to be 5, one step down. There's 4 chaplains. I am the one Black female, and I say that, I wear it as a badge of honor, but they asked me if I would like to be a part of that, and I prayed about it, and absolutely. And one of the things that we do is we get calls, and if someone is having a problem or an issue, then they call a chaplain to come out and be with those persons if they don't have a pastor or if they need a pastor out, and we just sit with them just for comfort. But one of the things that I'm doing is, and I'm so blessed by this, is that was the way it was set up before for the chaplain to go out with the police officer or meet the police officer there. But what they've asked me to do is to meet and speak with police officers if they need that, because they see a lot of things. They are involved in a lot of things, and sometimes they just need someone to talk to. So that's where I come in, and I love doing that. I love the heart of these police officers. I get to go and get to know them, and I make it a point to get to know them, because if something happens, I don't want them to get to know me, I want them to already know my heart, so they feel comfortable with me coming and being a part of supporting them. So I love doing that. I know their hearts. I go and do ride-alongs with them. If they have an issue in the family, one police officer, his daughter had passed away, I went to support them at the memorial service. So I just make myself present and make myself, I just want them to know that I love them and I'm there for them and I see them.
Wow, so. That is so cool. And you've even had, I've seen online a little bit, you've had like prayer nights and community nights where you've had representatives from the police force that have come out to that to support your church as well.
Yes.
That's such an amazing opportunity to build bridges and those relationships. What do you think is at the heart of this tension between the Black community and the police force, and what are some of the ways that can heal and that can become better?
I thought about that as I look, and see things happening. I believe a lot of it has to do with fear. A lot of it has to do with stereotypes, and it's just, when I say fear, I'm saying fear on both sides. The Black community fear police, and then police stereotyping and just fear of Blacks. It's all around fear, and I think that's what's at the heart of it. But I think that police are needed. Yeah. I mean, we need police, and so I think if there could be more training, if there could be, when I say training, I thought about this too, because I'm always thinking about this because I'm around a lot of police. And I think that just having that support, when I say support, is they go through a lot of things. And so if they can have that support, you can hire police, but make sure it's their call, not just a job, because there's a lot of stuff that's that's entailed with that. And so you have to really be passionate about what you're doing. And so, you do the background investigation, you get to know that person to a certain degree, but I think that should be a continual thing. I mean, I don't want to say every 6 months, that may be a little too much, but you always want to know where that person is and what that person's thinking. And two, respect. It needs to be respect on both sides. And so I just, I don't know. I mean, that's just my thought on it. Again, I'm a compassionate person and a passionate person. I just love everybody and the hearts of everyone, and I think it's a heart issue on both sides, and it needs to be respect, mutual respect. Yeah,
that's so true. And just like those building of relationships, like I know for me personally, growing up with all my friends were whites, all the people that I knew were white, and so I had inherent prejudices and things that I believed to be true about Black people that I didn't know any differently because I didn't have any relationships. And like as you build relationships with people, you get to know them, and then that ultimately shifts your perception of reality. And to find a way to build those relationships is just something that I'm so passionate about, and so the fact that you're doing that and you're involved in your police force, that I think that's absolutely amazing.
And I think, too, Pastor Paul, I think it's necessary to build those relationships, because if you're not building the relationships, you're stereotyping. You're going by what you hear and not what you know. And I think that it's important to build relationships. It's important to, if you are, and I can't speak for everyone, but if you are involved with a certain community, you want to get, get to know that community. I mean, not just go there when something bad is happening, because it's going to put you in a totally different frame of mind. But if you go there and you really show up and you're there and you get to know the community, and that's why I want to be a part of the community that I'm involved in, because I can't know the community by listening to someone else. I have to literally get out there myself to find out.
And to be intentional with those relationships, sometimes you have to like push yourself and say, I'm going to just make myself uncomfortable. I this is a stupid little thing that I do, but like, just because in Delano, we just don't have a lot of people of other, races, other ethnicities. And so if I see someone that's not white, I just try to make a point just to say hi.
Yes.
And like, just thinking about that and kind of being conscious of that, those are just ways that we can start building those bridges, because if you don't have those personal relationships, you just don't have the perspective that you need to kind of see people where they're at.
But you have to be genuine too.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to do it just to be doing it. Your heart has to be in it.
Yeah.
Because someone had asked me, what could they do as a white person to step up, and they were saying that someone told them, invite this person to dinner. Well, make sure you're inviting them because you truly want to get to know them, not because you're just doing it for for others to see. You really have to be invested in it, and I think that's truly important.
Yeah, people can see right through that.
Yes, exactly.
Fake stuff.
Exactly.
Talk to my community real quick. How can the people of Delano and our surrounding community be part of the solution that is racial prejudice and that is racism in our country? Okay, well, I still say it starts with the heart. You have to be willing to do it, willing to do the work, educating oneself. You have to get to maybe the history. Some of the history. I'm doing a lot of reading now, stuff that I didn't even know, but seeing where the person is coming from and meeting that person where they are and being intentional about it. And again, when you do meet with that person or trying to get to know that person, don't have an agenda, and be ready to listen, because again, sometimes when a person meets with another person, they want to talk, but you really have to listen, because you're still not understanding, and you will never understand if you're not listening and hearing what the person is saying. And you have to have your heart open, and as I said, you have to be ready to be uncomfortable, and don't be fearful. We're just people. And we just want to be treated as people. It's not as people of a different color. And if I say that if you get to know me is to love me, but you cannot allow the color of my skin to block you from getting to know me. And so I would say just be open to hearing and listen to the person's heart. There's people of all different colors, and I don't want to say races because it's the human race, but that you may not connect with. So you have to get to know the individual themselves and get to know their heart and hear their heart and listen, and you may find out that there are pretty cool people. Yeah, that's good. I think love, prayer, and compassion. Jesus is very compassionate, and I think if we can be compassionate, we can have sympathy and empathy for each other, and just love each other. Again, going back to Genesis 1:27, the Imago Dei, seeing each of us in the image of God. And putting aside our differences and allowing our differences to bring us closer together as opposed to dividing us. Yeah. I think you look at the church today, and I mean, unfortunately, in a lot of ways, we've been a part of the problem and not necessarily a part of the solution. And you talked about a church of 5,000 people with 3 that aren't white. That should never happen in a major city. That's just not reflective of the community. And so what's the church's responsibility as ultimately we are addressing this for our nation? One, to pray and come together. I say unity, and it starts with us. I mean, if the church can't do it, how do we expect the world to do it? One of the things that God had placed on my heart back in, I think it was either April or May, and I had been reaching out to the community, and when I say community, I'm talking about faith leaders in the community, and that had happened for about 3.5 years. I had reached out, I had called pastors, left messages, nobody had responded to me, no one would reach out to me, and then all of a sudden this George Floyd incident
happened. And now is the time. That's the theme that God gave me. Now is the time. So now is the time for us to come together in unity and to pray with each other and to see what we can do to build each other up and to do it as a church family, a body, so that we can be reflective to the world. Because again, if we don't do it, how do we expect the world to do it? So I say come together in unity, pray together, show up for each other, get out in the community and do things, be genuine, be intentional, and just love on each other. That's what we need to do, because I believe that, well, God is love, and I believe that if we can do that and we can show people that we can love each other despite the color of our skin, then I think that is a start. It's a start, but it starts with prayer, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing these prayer. And I don't want to call them events, because prayer is not an event; it's a lifestyle. Right. But now is the time prayer services where we're coming together and we're praying, and this includes not just the chief of police, but police officers and the mayor of both city of Minnetonka and Hopkins, and then other faith leaders that are in the area. So now is the time. Let's come together. Let's pray. Let's be a part of the solution and not the problem. And so when people see that, then they want to follow. Yeah. And so they're coming alongside us. So
good. Well, thank you so much for sharing with us today and being here and coming out to Delano. And it's been a blessing. I heard your heart certainly today, and I know that a church is going to hear that as you just shared with us, and so thank you for doing this, and we appreciate you.
Yes, and thank you for having me, and I'm so honored and so blessed, and I'm so thankful to have you as a friend, Pastor Paul.